We're back with food writers talking about food writing. We're on YouTube, so shouts to you if you're on the YouTube platform. You can comment. We're also on the podcast, of course. David Farley is here. What is up, my friend?
Hey, it's good to see you again.
It's really good to see you. I wanted to have you on for a long time. And we're doing it for this show. We're doing it for the food writers talking about food writing because I've always enjoyed your journalism. You have so many stories, such deep interest in Europe, in Asia. You've written so many great things. We're going to go over, you've written a book about Jesus' foreskin, which is amazing, as a relic. This is the day the new pope has been named.
Right, an American pope.
An American pope.
Bob.
Yeah, Pope Bob. Pope Bob from Chicago. Wonder if do you think he likes tavern-style pizza, the new pope?
That's a great question. And
yeah.
I'll lose all respect for him if he only eats Chicago-style pizza.
I mean, Vito and Nick's on the south side, if he's there, doing the giardiniera sausage-style pizzas, if that's comes out that he was a Vito and Nick's guy, I'm like, I'm Jewish, but I might be rethinking this thought.
I love the tavern-style pizza, though.
It's so good. Well, let's actually talk about food. We'll start... let's talk about some recent restaurant visits. You start. Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I went to twice in the last month. I've gone to Masara, this place on Broadway and 19th Street. From the chef, Stefano Secchi is chef at Resdora. Yeah.
Oh.
This is his second restaurant, and it's great. I went there first and just ate a few different things, including he makes these little Neapolitan-style pizzas, and he uses a starter dough. That's 35 years old. That started in his family's ancestral village in Campania, outside of Naples. So he's still making pizza from that same starter dough, and I think it's the best pizza I've ever had outside of Italy.
Incredible. I know. I mean, he mastered pasta at his first place, right?
Yeah, but this isn't a pizzeria. He just happens to have these things. He has I also went back for the pasta tasting menu, which is fabulous. It's 5 courses
at the new place.
Yeah, Masara. It's not, at Resdora, it's a little bit more creative and avant-garde. Masara is a little bit more just kind of down-to-earth, regular, rustic Italian. And it's specifically Campania, because that's where his family comes from.
That's his family's from, yeah. I haven't been there, but that's a great rec. My rec is I went to Sorrigal in Fort Lee, New Jersey recently. I've been thinking about Fort Lee a lot. I've been reading this great novel that's set there, and it's one of my favorite spots in Koreatown up there. I had gamjatang, grilled mackerel, that has this really good wasabi, rice vinegar, soy sauce, dipping sauce. They did a side of solentang. And I didn't have the dokdoritang, which is a spicy chicken stew, but I want to go back. So that's my pick.
All right.
Really good spot. We've had some Korean meals together, you and I.
We have, yeah.
I feel
I've never been to Fort Lee, but I'm dying to go.
Fort Lee is just across the bridge, so you can just get there. It's right here, basically in New York, and incredible Koreatown there.
Right. I like going to Murray Hill in Flushing.
That place is like Mapo Barbecue. We went there one time. I remember. With the crew.
We did. Yeah.
I think you gathered those folks together, and I remember a night we were at Pocha 32 on 32nd.
Mm-hmm.
It was a couple dude. We were just catching up, and that was the night I left my laptop in a cab.
Oh my God.
Which happens.
Wow. So you associate that with me?
I associate with that night, and I associate that with soju. the fine ramifications of makgeolli. And makgeolli in the melon, they do that. But that night I was able, because I paid with a credit card, I got the cab company number. I went to the cab company, and I left my phone number at the cab garage, and they called me, and they had my laptop.
That's a miracle.
And I gave them money. I was like, "Here's money."
Totally.
So that's what I would think about you and back in my drinking days. Back in my drinking, but
bad influence.
But I really, again, I just love your work, David. I think it's terrific. You just have such a mind. I mean, you've written about Kalau in Hanoi.
Oh, yeah.
Chaka, sorry, I always forget.
No, oh, yeah.
I actually just had a interview right before we got into the session, and I mixed up Chaka and Kalau.
Oh, right. I've written about Kalau in Hoi An and Chaka in Hanoi, actually.
You have. So you did. I did not make an error, actually. That's correct. You've written about this small German town in the Black Forest that had the most Michelin stars in Europe. You've profiled the booming cocktail scene in Belgrade. I love, what drives you to write these stories, David?
Hunger and thirst. But besides that...
Insatiable.
Yeah. I have a strong curiosity about things. And I always have a driving question. It's usually how did this begin? I was in Belgrade to write something else a few years ago, and then I just noticed that the cocktail bar scene there was insane. It was so great, and nobody. When you think about Belgrade, cocktails is not what comes to mind. And I just thought, how did this happen? How did this happen? And so I got an assignment so I could go figure out how it happened. So, so it's like that too. Like in this town, Bayersbronn in the Black Forest, they have restaurants that has the most Michelin stars per capita in the world. Yeah. And my question again was, what's in the water here? Like, how is it that there's this small collection of 3 Michelin star restaurants, and 2 Michelin star restaurants in this little village in the middle of nowhere? So
what's the answer? I mean, was it like something fixed with the government, got all the people to vote, or was it truly just like a destination for European travelers and just like a high concentration of talent?
It was really, there's 2-3 Michelin star restaurants there in addition to the other great restaurants. Yeah. And they had kind of like a competition going, like a rivalry. And when one restaurant did this, the other restaurant did this. When they did this, the other did that. It was like this healthy competition that they kept getting. When one of them got their first Michelin star, a year later, the next one got its Michelin star. And then, so it's like that, basically.
So I remember during the pandemic, vividly, there's an article about Serbia and how like Serbia was like just booming, and it was like I remember just like, this is where the party's at during COVID. What's it like there?
Yeah, it was booming because they were one of the few countries in Europe that didn't have COVID restrictions for tourists.
Okay, that's it.
So you could go there and you didn't have to take a test or do anything.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I love, people have given me people sometimes aren't happy that when I say, I'm going to Belgrade, and they're like, because they think everyone blames Serbia for the wars of the 90s. They were aggressive. That's true, but that was like a generation ago. And the people that I know there the young people are like people my age and below are wonderful. And I always come back with like 10 new friends. There's something so warm and welcoming about Serbs. It's crazy. Like they're really actually genuinely nice. You'd be like, I did a hike across Serbia and Croatia once, and on the Serbian side, if you like make direct eye contact with some guy as you're walking through a village, like 2 minutes later you're in his garage drinking rakia, that potent brandy that's like everywhere in the Balkans. So, and then when I got to Croatia, I would walk by people, and if I didn't say dobar dan, which is good day, hello, then they wouldn't say it at all. But on the Serbian side, like I said, we were. Like I was just making friends along the way. It was crazy. I'm not saying that Croatians are not friendly, but Serbs are extra friendly.
But there's like not a clear tourism path from the United States to Serbia. It feels like it's maybe a place because of that war stigma, which is a generation ago. But also we don't really maybe know what's to do there. But tell us a bit.
Exactly. I mean, there are direct flights between New York and Belgrade on Air Serbia, so that's kind of surprising.
How is it? It's a pretty good airline?
Yeah, it was fine. It was good. It's just a normal airline.
Airline, yeah.
But Belgrade it kind of reminds me of Berlin in a weird way. It's not the prettiest city in the world, but the vibe is great. It's like, it's really, the vibe is spectacular. And I'm not really into like nightclubbing anymore, but the nightlife scene is great too. And they have these boats parked on the Danube River, or maybe it's the Sava River. They meet in Belgrade, and the boats are just party. They don't leave. They're always docked, but they are clubs. So you can go there, and there's like DJs playing and bands playing, and
that sounds amazing.
Yeah, totally.
Do you have a Bergheim story from Berlin?
I tried once, and I got in once.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. I was in line for the bathroom, and I got in the wrong line. I was in the line for the stalls. I just had to urinate, but I ended up talking to this woman who was in line in front of me, and then we were just talking about whatever, and all of a sudden when we got to the stalls, I was pulled into a stall with that woman and like 8 other leather-clad guys.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? And we were cramped. We were like, really like, you couldn't move. And someone had pulled out a little mirror and started snorting some white stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's cocaine. And she said, no, it's bath salts.
Oh, shit.
And she's like, you want some? And I'm just like, no, thanks.
No, I'm good. I'll stick with
trying to cut down on my bath salts this week.
Yeah, bath salts. They had a heyday in like the early 2000s, like a big bath salt era.
Yeah. So then I finally found my friend, and she said like, God, where were you? What happened? I'm like, I got an interesting story for you.
Yeah. Oh, well, good Bergheim story. Yeah. I mean, it's like this mythic place that gets talked about on the show more than you'd think on our podcast. We've had some Bergheim chat. You're heading to Prague tomorrow.
That's right.
You're on assignment, and you've been there already twice. You were there in February. What draws you to Prague?
Yeah. I lived there for 3 years, and I have a master's degree in Central and Eastern European history. So it's a place that I just feel very comfortable in. Now I have lots of friends there. It's a place that feels like a second home. I never need to pull out my phone to look at where I'm at.
Yeah.
I know how to get I know where all the trams go, the subways, blah, blah, blah. And I feel kind of not protective over it, but I feel like I've been watching the city change since the early 90s. And it's been really nice to see it change and grow in a positive way. Mm-hmm. I had all these friends there in the 90s, these Czechs, and they were everyone was confused because they would just come out of this communist period and just belly flopped into capitalism, and no one really knew what was going on, what the future was going to hold. And now I have all my friends there from the 90s, they're all doing really well. They're fathers and mothers, and they have great jobs, and they have lots of money, and they're happy. And, it's just, for me, it's like great to see that.
What's like the economy like right now? I mean, and visiting there, is the dollar strong? Is it affordable to go? Because I think of like a lot of Europe, it's all crept up, right? Expense wise, even these places where we assume it's dirt cheap, it's not.
Yeah, I noticed that I was there a year ago, and then I was back there in February. And in that period, I noticed that prices had gotten much higher.
Yeah.
It used to be considered kind of an affordable destination for people from North America and Western Europe. But now it's about on par with prices in Spain and Portugal, and maybe Italy a little bit.
Wow. Yeah.
It's still more affordable than Germany or France probably, but it's not like the affordable destination that it used to be.
That we thought about, like the travel guides, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You've written some travel guides, right?
I write for the Fodor's New York City guidebook. I write about the restaurants in there.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Fodor's is still in biz?
Yeah.
No, I wrote the Fodor's Brooklyn book.
Oh, I remember that.
I was on that. I wrote like 5 neighborhoods. I've written guidebooks too.
I remember that.
Wait, so it's still around?
Yeah. Every year I update and write the Fodor's book.
Is it digital only?
No, it's print.
Listen, this is no shade. I love Fodor's. Like, Fodor's is iconic brand. It used to be part of Penguin Random House. I think now it's independent, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So they kind of like rebooted it, or maybe it's just independent. I don't know.
I guess so. I don't know.
That's cool. So when you write guidebooks, like, what's the deal? Like, I mean, you're thinking about timeless places, because I mean, that's a challenge, right? In the age of social media and just online culture, these things go out of date really quickly.
Yeah, I try not to put in a lot of new restaurants unless I feel they're really solid and they're going to stick around, because it's really annoying. Because I update it in January, then the book comes out in November for the whole year. So that means basically, like, the restaurants I'm putting in there, I mean, the information is already almost a year old when the book comes out.
Yeah.
And then it's got to exist for another year until I update it again. So, so usually put the kind of like timeless places in there.
I remember writing the Brooklyn one and just putting like my favorite places. I did not have the responsibility that you had. And I just like hyped it up as like the greatest, like just like my literal favorite places.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like
that's what I do that anyway. I just can't do any like brand new places because they might close.
They might close. That's a good good journalism there, David. All right, well, let's talk about some food writing. We have a couple stories we're going to go over. Great week. First one is Welcome to Reno, the mighty mecca of all-you-can-eat sushi. A great piece from Priya Krishnan in the New York Times. She writes about Reno. She calls it Las Vegas light, and it's brimming with neon and has casinos, and it's kind of this like stopover when you're going to Tahoe. I've never been to Reno. Have you been? Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice place.
Not really.
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of have like no opinion of it, but what I've learned from this piece is that it is also home of all-you-can-eat sushi. So Priya has a terrific piece where she talks about the dynamic of the sushi there and also how the tariffs are affecting it. But first about the sushi, this is not like the omakase style that you'll get in LA or New York. A lot of it's cooked fish, actually. One example is the Playboy roll, which is cream cheese, onion, tempura, shrimp, red snapper, avocado, jalapeno, and both ponzu and habanero sauces. Or the Mickey, it's seared tuna with avocado crab, unagi sauce, sriracha, and it's named after Disney mascot. So we're getting a little sense of the vibe here. The pricing, like $27 a person, but again, this is all you can eat. Priya spoke with Sierra Wong, who works at the local food distributor Sierra Meat and Seafood, and she sells about $200,000 worth of fish a week. Wong sells mostly cooked fish and frozen fish, which is much less expensive as the stuff you're going to get from Japan and shipped in fresh, or at least like raw and to serve that way. And it's clear that the locals like this taste. This is the style of sushi you're going to find in Reno. the question of tariffs came up, and tariffs are really affecting the all-you-can-eat sushi business in Reno. For example, 100 cases of eel from China went for $11.90 a pound before prices jumped just this year to $13.95 a pound, and last year it was actually $8.40. I think some of the sushi owners are padding this all-you-can-eat dynamic with things like dumplings and edamame, so like people are getting filled up on the cheap stuff. But really, this was a great piece by Priya. I think it's like a great Priya-style piece where she's really embedding, talking to the people on the ground. And it really gave me a sense like there's a place in America where there's cooked sushi on the menu and you can eat a shit ton of it. What did you think of the piece?
Yeah, I thought it was great because she took a kind of deep dive into this micro world that most of us didn't know existed. And it was very kind of funny in a way, like that there was, when some of the people she quoted, they had this sense of pride that they're like the all-you-can-eat capital of America, and it's just so interesting. It just made me stop and think like when Western civilization is crumbling, historians are going to point to the all-you-can-eat buffets as like the beginning of the end of our civilization. I'm joking, but
I know.
But also like I just think, what does it say about us as a society and a culture that we have all-you-can-eat sushi and all-you-can-eat everything? When there's people making in other parts of the world like the equivalent of like $5 a month, and we have all this insane amount of food that's available to us.
Yeah, and then like the food waste as well.
Exactly.
Mind. I mean, it made me think about all-you-can-eat sushi in New York, which there's still a few places, and I don't know if I would go there personally. But then in Reno, there's like a whole culture, and people go out many times a week. And I think, like, honestly, some of these dishes sound pretty good. Actually, I would eat some of this sushi that's cooked and slathered with all sorts of sauces. It's like kind of a messier style. Your face says it all. You're not buying it.
No, I don't. It seems like when I'm in California, I end up at sushi places with my family where they just pile on stuff onto rolls now. Especially avocado. It's avocado overload. It's insane. And so I really like. I've kind of evolved into more of just like a simple sushi eater. Like the simpler the roll, the better. Where you can really enjoy the fish, which is should be the star of the show.
For sure. That's my vibe as well. We share that. I'm kind of saying like I would eat one of these rolls. I don't think I would have 70. Actually, one thing that she didn't report on is like I wanted to get a sense of how many rolls are people eating. I didn't get that from the piece.
Right.
I mean, because like if you fill up with the rice, so like I don't know, can you have like 10 rolls? Is that possible?
I don't know. I did an article about 20 years ago for Time Out New York when they still did like food features.
Oh yeah.
And I took a competitive eater, a guy named Eric Badlands Booker.
Oh, Adam, I love that guy.
Yeah, and I took him to 3 all-you-can-eat buffets in 3 days or in whatever, and 3 different times for lunch. And we went to an Indian place, a sushi place, and a Brazilian steakhouse. And it was amazing. At the Indian place, after his like 11th trip up, the nervous-looking manager pointed out the desserts to him, meaning kind of like, hey, maybe
give him a little segue.
Maybe you should just eat dessert and finish up,
Yeah.
And then at the sushi place, the photographer came, so he was really hamming it up, and he was like, putting his plate to his mouth and with his chopsticks just shoveling the food into his mouth, and people were clapping, and he was on fire.
I love that.
And it was nuts.
That competitive eating vibe. Like, I mean, I was more of a Sonia Thomas Black Widow fan. Crazy Legs Conti.
Right.
He hangs out a bit downtown. He's a New York guy.
Oh yeah. I've met Crazy Legs.
Have you? What's Crazy?
Hungry Charles Hardy. I had a student. I used to teach writing at NYU, and a woman who took my class. Her name's Maria Edible.
Great name.
I know.
Food writer.
She was a competitive.
Life.
She was a competitive eater. A small, petite woman, but like Sonia Thomas.
Yeah.
And we went after we kind of became friendly, I guess, because of our food connection. After the semester, we went out for a drink, and she took me to a bar in Nolita. I can't remember what it was called now. Anyway, and the bartender was Crazy Legs Conti. She's like, this is Crazy Legs Conti. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, no, I think he's definitely downtown. Like the guy's like hangs out. Like I think we have some mutual friends. Maybe Conti should come on the show. Like we'll get him.
Yeah. Oh my God, you should have a competitive eater on the show.
It would be fun to talk about that. I think it's a fun thing and it's still very popular. So, all right, we have another story. This was a really good one. It was in New York Magazine this week. Lucian Smith gets a job by Madeline Long Coleman at New York Mag. I thought this piece had many layers. We have a lot to discuss. So Lucian Smith is an artist, and his background is he was successful maybe 10 years ago, sold a lot of modern art and had a gallerist, was a party guy. I didn't really read too much about him beyond the story. Maybe his career faded a bit. It was hard to tell. But the guy wants to reboot food, which I have been thinking about. I think Gordon Mata Clark had a retrospective at MoMA like 15 years ago. I went to that, and food was part of it. And I remember I think about it a lot. And so Food was a restaurant in Soho. It opened in 1971 by Clark and his partner Carol Gooden, and really this was a restaurant staffed primarily by artists, and the food was very simple. Gordon recalls in the piece that it was cooked in large vats. It was a lot of gumbos and stews, and it was the kind of place where like Paul Murkowski would hang out, and like John Cage and Robert Rauschenberg would play a show afterwards, like a true artist hang. But Lucian Smith wants to do a version of that, and that's cool. Like I'm into that. But the story kind of takes a little bit of a twist. We'll get to it. So there's the restaurant is going to be in Times Square, 2 blocks from a luxury hotel. Smith says that no matter how quote unquote corny anyone thinks it is, Times Square is for artists. This is my Soho, Smith says, and I'm very into it. Cool enough. Smith also says, it wouldn't have been fair to me to open an artist-run restaurant without giving some credit to the original idea. So the impetus is like, I'm going to do an artist restaurant and food is going to be the name. And really, there's a little bit of controversy here at the end, and I want to get into that. So the idea, the restaurant opens or is announced, and Carol Gooden doesn't really know it's going to be reannounced or relaunched. She says it was framed in some vague statement. They were on the phone and chatting about the restaurant, and really she didn't find out that it was reopening until a reporter contacted her, and she saw it on social media that food was relaunching. And I think it's a complicated story because this founder of this iconic, important artist-run restaurant is finding out that it's being rebooted with the same visual identity of the original food in Times Square. I don't have like a full thought if it's a good or bad thing. I just think that it was a very good piece that really got into generations of artists and how they want to interpret the past as homage or possibly for profit. What did you think?
Yeah, I think that Lucian Smith needs to learn more about how to run a restaurant.
Yeah.
He has this grand idea, and it's not even about the food. He wants to just have an artist hang. And I have a feeling it feels so forced to do this that I fear it's not going to work out in the way that he hopes it does.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of details about the restaurant too. It's like, Lucian wants to run it with a rotating roster of 80 artists as the staff, which is interesting to have like not a permanent staff, but a rotating staff. I think Lucian wants this to be a very simple menu. Quote, it needs to be similar to a Chipotle bowl, which I don't know. I just think that it's a cool idea to pay an homage to this iconic restaurant, but I agree. Maybe the concept isn't quite there. It will open eventually in Times Square, and I'm sure people will grade it. But you live in Soho. You've lived there for 20 years.
West Village, actually.
West Village, sorry. Close enough. Train right away. But what do you think about the idea that like old Soho, old downtown New York is being represented in Times Square?
Right. I guess, I never thought about it, but I suppose Times Square has an old Soho vibe,
I agree.
So I didn't think about it until I read the article. I was like, oh yeah, that was the one thing that I kind of agreed with in that article. It's like, oh yeah, he's right about that. We go to restaurants for the ambience and the vibe and the food. But if a restaurant has great ambience and a vibe but bad food, I'm not going to go there. It's got to have all those things. Or maybe if I go to places because the food's great but the ambience sucks. But if the primary reason why we go out, I think, is because of the food. Yeah. And so I just fear that he's emphasizing so much about the artists and the vibe, and that people aren't going to go there for the food, or they're not going to go there at all.
Speaking of the food, I think one of the dishes is, quote, Chinese chicken salad, quote, you really can't get that salad anywhere in New York. I was like, Really?
I don't know about that.
Chinese chicken salad is around everywhere, and there's some really good ones. I love those like proclamations. This is just a credit to Madeline Long Coleman for writing a terrific piece and gives us a lot to think about. So that was a great one. I want to move on to the next topic. It's not really a piece. It's your book, and its title is An Irreverent Curiosity: In Search of the Church's Strangest Relic in Italy's Oldest Town. I thought this book when I read it back in 2010. It was such a Farley piece of writing that was in long form. And it was immersive reporting. It was a lot of funny lines, a lot of humor built into it. Tell us a little bit about this story, this book. And it's also in print still. I looked.
It's in print. There's a documentary that National Geographic made about it.
Tell us all about it.
Yeah. So I was living in Rome for a while, and I took a day trip to this village 40 miles north of Rome called Calcutta, Calcata, so not to be confused with the Bengali metropolis.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating because the village is like a bewitching town on a hill, medieval town. And it was partially abandoned in the 60s, and hippies and artists moved in. And today it's now these aging hippies and their children and artists and stuff. So I was like, I should write a book about this. This would be great. But I didn't want to write with the typical like that travel book where someone moves to a village like Peter Mayle a year in Provence and they're the fish out of water and then they learn how to really live from the locals. So I was like, I would love to live here for a year, but I don't want to write that book. And then I found out that the village for about 400 years was home to a really weird holy relic until it disappeared mysteriously. And the holy relic was the foreskin of Jesus. Wow. You know, you never hear those words together, holy foreskin. So I was fascinated. Like I said, I have a master's degree in history. Yeah. And I love those things about history that kind of fall through the cracks that you just don't hear about. And I started doing research, and I found out that from the Middle Ages on until the 20th century, this relic was like a big time relic. People made pilgrimages there to pray in front of it. Popes gave indulgences to pilgrims who would pray, that saying that, you know, you'll have innumerable benefits in the afterlife if you come and pray. And, you know, it's people snicker about it, but it's also, if you're a believer, it's the only piece of flesh Christ could have left on earth after he ascended into heaven. So it's funny that it's a piece of his genitalia, but it's also like his own flesh. Yeah. And, you know, I'm not a Christian, and and I don't believe that holy relic was really a piece of Jesus. You can almost see relics dealers in the Middle Ages going through the Bible, looking what they could have. And then they got to Luke 22:2, I think it is, or 2:22, where they mentioned Jesus was circumcised on his 8th day. And you could see like sort of a light bulb moment or a candle moment flicker that they're like, oh, if we can get some poor soul's foreskin, we could say as Jesus' foreskin. So, and then by the Middle Ages, there were like, 15 or 18 places around Europe, most of them in France for some reason, that claim that they had the holy foreskin.
I love that part of the book because you kind of unwind it slowly, slow play it, but then you realize that Calcutta is like one of many European cities that claims to have Jesus' foreskin in its church.
Yeah, exactly. It was to me, it was just fascinating because also people until recently would go to this church to pray in front of it, and they really believed that it was his flesh, and so that fascinated me as a student of history.
Yeah, and I believe there was like some really interesting food scenes in the book too. I feel like you were cooking.
I could not escape writing about food, of course, because I was in Italy, and one of my best friends in the village was this guy named Pancho, who's American, but he's lived in Italy all his life, and he ran a restaurant there. He was a chef, and I used to hang out and help him cook sometimes and wash dishes, and he'd pour me wine, and we'd have great long philosophical talks about stuff. So it was great.
It's a terrific book. I'm linking to the show notes. You got to check it out. It's. Would you ever want to go back to Italy and write a book like this?
I'm kind of done with holy relics, I think, but
not relics, but just like going back and doing an embed and kind of figuring out what the broader is.
For sure, 100%.
I mean, you have a talent for it. So another story I want to talk about is one you wrote for Taste a couple of years ago. Everyone who invented the everything bagel in 2019. You published. I'm just going to read from your intro. Poppy seeds, sesame seeds, dried minced garlic, and onions and sea salt. These 5 ingredients aren't necessarily the heroes of the spice world, but in the bagel reality, they are enough. In fact, they are everything. Mixed together, they revolutionized the bagel world sometime in the early 1980s, or maybe it was the early 1970s. It depends on who you ask, because no fewer than 4 different people claim to be the Everything Bagels inventor, including restaurateur Joe Bastianich. I can't believe I'm saying that dude's name. Love this story. I'm linking to it. I love the reporting. Tell us about what you found out about Everything Bagels.
It was really interesting. It was interesting that all 4 of them were so willing to talk, and they knew that there were other people who claimed that they invented the bagel too. So, and Joe Bastianich too. He had such confidence about it. They all had a very similar story. So they all said basically that they, as teenagers, they were working in a bagel shop. It seemed like they were either in Queens or Brooklyn, and in the 70s or early 80s. And at the end of the day, when they're cleaning out the bottom of the oven where all the seeds fall. Yeah. One day they just got this idea that they said, what if we put all of these seeds on a bagel and see how that tastes? And then that was the birth of the Everything Bagel. The only thing we don't really know is who did it first.
Yeah.
The earliest guy is Brandon Steiner. He said he did it in 1971. Seth Godin said 76. Joe Bastianich said 79, and David Gusson said 1980. So,
wow.
So, but what I think is that, this is before the internet, obviously, is that I think they all probably invented it, but they didn't know about each other yet. There wasn't a way to like find out about this stuff.
Exactly. And there was a moment when the internet happened, or it became a television thing, and like it became pop culture, right? There was like a moment in like the 90s probably.
Exactly.
And then they all kind of claimed, I had this idea forever. I mean, you get an Everything Bagel if you have like bagels in a bag that aren't separated. I mean, basically, everything mixes together if you have like a mix of.
And now Trader Joe's sells all kinds of everything bagel spice stuff.
That was part of your piece.
It's like the cooler sibling to pumpkin spice or something.
Yeah.
Well, pumpkin spice is like the live, laugh, love of food.
Oh, gosh. I love that piece. It was great. Well, we're going to return to one of our favorite segments on this show. It's What Would You Pitch 1997 Graydon Carter. Today, we all know that Graydon Carter ran Vanity Fair during the glory years of the magazine industry, and at times would assign stories at $50,000, $100,000 a story plus expenses. So you're pitching Graydon. You've got him. You're readying your facts into the Vanity Fair offices. David Farley, what would you pitch 1997 Graydon Carter?
I'm really interested in food origins. So I've written a ton of articles about food origins, and especially when they have when there's a twist in the story. So I would do something that would incorporate as many food origins as possible, so that I could just travel all around the world and write like a 10,000 word or maybe 15,000 word piece about that.
So let's riff on some origins. What are you thinking about? Like,
for example, there's a Portuguese battered green bean dish called, I'm gonna butcher this Portuguese word. It's like a peixinha de horta, which is like little fish of the garden. Yeah. And sailors in the 15th, 16th century used to take them with them because they preserved well. And also during Lent, they would eat them because they couldn't eat meat, and they kind of tasted meaty to them. And so the Portuguese were in Japan for 100 years in the 16th century, and then they got kicked out by the emperor for proselytizing Christianity. But of course, they left a lot of their influence there. And one of those things they left was this recipe for the fried green beans. And so the Japanese took that, and then they started battering other things, and it became tempura. Yeah. And so I just think stuff like that's fascinating. Also, like the taco al pastor is like Middle Eastern in origin, because the Ottoman Empire fell, and in the crumbling of that, some people immigrated, and some went to Mexico, and they brought their turning spit.
Yeah, from like Lebanon
and lamb with them. Yeah, and then the Mexicans turned it into pork. Instead of putting in a pita, they put it in tortillas, and it became taco al pastor. Just stuff like that. Like about the larger forces of history shaping these things that are still part of these little things that are part of our everyday life are just, to me, are fascinating.
Yeah, I would like to see some modern foods in there too. Something like foods, like who invented the ecto cooler?
Oh, right.
Do you remember that?
Or the corn dog. No.
Or the corn dog. I mean, I think ecto cooler is this like iconic 1990s, even 80s, probably 90s, high C box, but who invented?
Oh, right. Okay.
I know it's a little bit, it's not really an origin story. I'm being a little bit basic here, but I love this idea. Right. I think it could become a book.
Yeah. In fact, I ran that idea by my agent relatively recently, and she's a hard one to get stuff by her, because she will say, I like that idea, but here's why I can't sell that book. And this is one of the few that she said, I could sell that book. Yeah. So it's just a matter of me putting together a proposal.
Yeah, get working, David Farley. That's great. I love that. I feel like Graydon would have taken it probably. Maybe.
What's your
I've gone over mine recently on the show. I think the last one was the history of Taco Bell.
I remember that.
But honestly, right now, I've been thinking about Japan as well. But I would love to write a story about Golden Guy, this like neighborhood in Japan that had this like iconic, like these really tiny bars. That I believe I was talking to Craig Maud recently. He just put out a memoir, and he was telling me about it. It's basically, it was in the post-war. It was like a place where like American GIs and such would hang out. I'm really paraphrasing the history of Golden Guy. This is me pitching a story with that I didn't actually research, but I got thinking about Golden Guy now, because right now it seems like an extremely torched tourist trap of a neighborhood in Tokyo. And though there's still like remnants of Golden Guy still there, at least the physical spaces. So if I was going to write this big story, I would love to like go to Golden Guy in 2025 and talk to some of the old timers who are still there, but also get into some color about the folks who are going there and why are you going to Golden Guy. And I think the narrative would be like TikTok. TikTok would be the reason why people go to Golden Guy, because it's this neighborhood that is very TikTokable, and you can go into a 3-seat, 4-seat bar and have a couple of drinks, and it just seems like it's ready for the selfie moment. And I just would love to write a long piece about this changing neighborhood and how social media kind of clearly has destroyed something that Japan was so well known for. And it was a really seedy place too, I have to say that Golden Guy used to be a place for a lot of prostitution, and it was a place that had just a lot of Yakuza hanging out there. So and now it's like a bunch of like influencers. So there's like something rich about it. That like if you spent like 20 nights in Golden Guy, I would call it that, something like that, and you actually spent a lot of time getting to know the people. I think there's like something really interesting about this like rapid change of a historical neighborhood. So.
Right. That's cool. I was in Tokyo recently, but I didn't go there.
Yeah, I didn't go there on my last trip.
I had food poisoning, so I was in bed for 10 days with an E. coli
10
infection.
days
Yeah.
on were you on a work trip?
It was 6 weeks. I went there, it was part honeymoon and then part assignment, because I was writing a magazine story about the origins of pho in and around Hanoi.
Oh, cool.
And on my penultimate day in Hanoi, I went for breakfast for pho, and then I thought that's it. And then in the morning on the way to the airport, I started to feel knots in my stomach, and it was the beginning of a really like almost deadly food poisoning infection.
Wow.
I had to go to the doctors, and they wanted to hospitalize me, but I didn't have international health insurance. So and they're like, okay, well, if your kidney fails on the flight home to New York, you're going to die. And I was just like, oh my God.
What happened?
But I didn't die. So
wait, so you took the risk of dying?
Yeah. Well, they said they did more tests, and then they got back to me and said, your tests look better than we thought. So we're not going to insist you get hospitalized, but go to a doctor as soon as you get back to New York. And I didn't. I was fine.
You're fine. So how long were you in bed?
Like 10 days. I lost like 20 pounds.
10 days you were in bed, man.
Yeah.
What were you doing in bed?
I was watching TV, reading, doom scrolling.
Oh my gosh. While you're in this incredible city where you could be.
I know. I didn't get to see Tokyo at all. But I was gone I was also in Kyoto and Osaka, so I did get to experience parts of Japan, but just Tokyo was completely like just my hotel room.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yeah.
How'd the story turn out?
Good. It's coming out in the AAA magazine, Westways, in the fall. So, but yeah, I love doing that story because it's another origin story.
Yeah.
So, and when you get to origin stories, when there's people still alive who remember things about it, or maybe their grandfather talked about it or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because it gets murky, and there's usually more than one origin story, and they're competing against each other, and it kind of becomes fascinating.
What's modern Hanoi like? I haven't been there in about 10 years. I love that city.
All right. Yeah, I love Hanoi. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. It's in the center of town. It's a little bit annoying because you can't walk 5 feet without someone screaming at you to buy something or to hello massage, stuff like that. And but then once you get out of the center, that no one bothers you at all. They don't even think about you. So that's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love eating in Hanoi so much, and I like Vietnamese people. And
it's a great. I love Vietnam, man. Got to go back. Great chatting with you. I think we're going to wrap with our taste check.
Okay.
What do you think about this?
Sure.
Yeah. So on This Is Taste, we have guest our brother discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, Fast and Furious taste check, media edition. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
What is the first thing you read in the morning, and where do you read it?
All right. On my couch on my laptop, and it's the New York Times.
Yeah. Are you reading the homepage? Or are you reading the newsletter?
I'm always, well, I do get a couple newsletters, but I am always just go to NewYorkTimes.com and just see, what's on fire in our world.
Yeah. Do you read anything on actual paper?
Yeah, I subscribe to a few Buddhist magazines, like, for example, why can't I think of it now?
That's all right.
Tricycle.
Oh, yeah,
one of them.
okay.
Tricycle. I subscribe to the New Yorker. They always have these deals in the New Yorker. You get it for $1 an issue for a while.
Yeah.
And then when that runs out, I unsubscribe until I get another nice offer, and then I subscribe.
Game recognized game, like that move.
Yeah,
it's a good one. What was your favorite food publication growing up?
I didn't have any favorite food publication.
No?
When I was growing up, I wanted to be a rock star, so I was reading music publications, and I was playing my guitar as much as possible.
Oh, sick! What was in rotation for music mags back then?
There was Cream.
Yeah.
And there was Rolling Stone, of course.
Yeah.
I've been a longtime subscriber to Rolling Stone. What else was there? There are a couple heavy metal magazines that I can't remember what they are. Thrasher, yeah. No, that was a skateboarding.
That's skateboarding, right? Duh.
Yeah.
What am I thinking about? There's something ER. Yeah, right. Anyways, I don't know. But no food.
No, I only got into food maybe when I went away to university or something.
Yeah.
But I always was curious about food. I was a good eater. I wasn't a picky eater at all.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the fascination with food until I became an adult.
Do you remember watching early food TV? Do you have early memories?
No, I don't.
No,
I was never watching any of that.
You
stuff.
weren't a food TV, no PBS for you.
No, I watched. I used to watch Rick Steves on PBS when I was in high school.
Yeah,
and that's I have to credit him because that's how I first started to get a sense of wanderlust.
Yeah,
he only did Europe, but I was like, wow, all these places look amazing, and he really got me to start thinking, oh, maybe I should. When I can afford it and I get a little older, maybe I should go traveling. So.
It's incredible that Rick Steves had an influence on you because, you're reporting in that kind of style for all these travel publications you write for.
Yeah.
Do you still...
And I've met him a couple of times. He's a nice guy.
Is he? What's his deal? Is he cool?
Yeah, he's nice. He kind of looks like... kind of has this Ted Flanders vibe, or your neighbor who's a Lutheran minister or something.
Yeah.
But he's a very nice guy, down to earth, and he's he can get philosophical very quickly, and I really enjoy talking to him. The first time I met him, I was almost starstruck because he had this kind of influence on my life. Once I started traveling, I decided, this is how I want my life to be. I want to have a life of travel, either living abroad or a job where I'm traveling abroad all the time. And so I've done both, lived abroad and now I travel.
Very cool. And it rolls back to a little bit of Rick Steves.
Yeah, exactly.
I got respect for the guy. I think so many people ended up traveling the world because of him.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't like him because the people who are really devoted to him are people who are leaving the country for the first time, and they're a little bit, so maybe they're right wing because they haven't traveled that much or whatever. I don't know, but that's his whole thing is he's trying to get people to travel for the first time and tell them the outside world is not scary, generally not.
I think it's an apolitical.
You don't have to fear
audience.
Going into another culture. It could open your mind, and so. I had a friend who's a tour guide in Rome, and he said he hated when people would show up with their Rick Steves books because they're so devoted to him that he would say, let's go to this place for lunch. He'd go, wait, go through their book. Oh, it's not in Rick's book, so we can't go there.
That's crazy.
That's how faithful they are.
That's wild. I recognize Rick's power there and influence to this day.
Yeah.
And I think he just got a lot of people to get a passport, which I think is a very cool
Exactly.
thing. So, Farley, where are you at right now with YouTube and TikTok and the way food is represented on those platforms?
I just joined TikTok.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's weird.
You will not have any free time anymore.
So, but I don't. That said, I uploaded some videos that I've made for my Instagram account because I thought, why not just join TikTok and see what happens? Because I've already got a bunch of videos that I've edited and stuff. I have 2 followers, so as a result, I don't really look at it. So I can't really comment on TikTok, but I love looking at YouTube.
Yeah.
Some of the food things are great. I love I go down these rabbit holes on a place where I find these YouTubers who go to like, say, Saigon, and they eat their way through it, or they just focus on one dish and they're eating many different types of it. And I love that stuff. I don't have any particular like favorite food YouTubers, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a great platform for short form, long form video of food, and I think like there's like really high production values now.
Yeah, so. And there's a guy, one guy that I follow who's not really related to food. It's called the Honest Guide, and there's this guy Janek who's in Prague, and he started to just do like a Prague-based YouTube channel for tourists, but then he started catching scammers on the street, people trying to do money exchanges and stuff, and his thing has kind of become like catching scammers in Prague.
Oh, shit.
And then or like corrupt taxi drivers or anything that goes along with that. And he actually he does his episodes where he films his interactions with the scammers and gets them arrested and blah blah blah. And to me it's fascinating. He's doing a very good deed.
Yeah, he's like How to Catch a Predator, like Prague travel edition.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
I've seen some of that on TikTok. That's like a little bit of a genre.
Yeah, there's
scammers. It's
a woman in Venice, an older woman who's become popular on TikTok for being like scammer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope she's right when she's
exactly
claiming that someone's a scammer. That's all I have to say about that. Last question: where do you want to be in 5 years with your media career?
I would like to just still be making a living doing it, because I'm always not sure that this profession, I'm a food and travel journalist, is going to exist, or it'll exist, but I don't know if I'll be able to make a living at it. I fear that. So I would like to just be doing what I'm doing now. I'm not like, I don't have wild ambitions to become the next Anthony Bourdain or something like that. I just want to, I love my life and I love what I do for a living. And every day I acknowledge with gratitude that I'm just so lucky to be able to do this, to have this life, and I'm very fortunate for it. So my wish is that I can just keep doing it and making a living at it, and writing and learning and
love that.
Yeah.
Well, you're so great. I love your work, and maybe we'll work on something on Taste. It's been a few years, but
we should. Yes.
I'll keep reading your work, Farley. Thank you so much for joining Food Writers Talking About Food Writing.
Thanks. I'm a longtime listener, so it's an honor to be on the show.
Thank you.